We all know the story of Japan's post-war miracle. But what if I told you the real revolution happened much earlier? Long before the neon lights of Tokyo, a feudal society transformed into a global superpower in just a few decades. This is the untold story of the first Japanese miracle and the dark seeds of war it planted. For years, Japan's economic rise after World War II and its emergence as a global power have been studied in universities worldwide. During its golden era between 1950 and 1985, much was written about its innovative production techniques, its success in turning technological advances into consumer goods, and its aggressive marketing in export markets. This was the era of the salaryman, the rise of Toyota, and the global dominance of Japanese electronics. However, the long period of Japanese stagnation that began in 1989, often called the Lost Decades, remains a darker chapter. It is a story of how the world's most promising economy hit a brick wall. We must analyze how Japan's largest banks effectively faced bankruptcy in the early 90s, and how public debt rose from 60% of GDP in 1990 to over 230% today. Despite massive monetary expansion and Abenomics, deflationary trends persist. To understand why this happened, we must look back much further than 1945. The true Japanese miracle occurred between 1854 and 1918. Until 1854, Japan was a hermit kingdom under the Shogun's military dictatorship. Society was frozen in time. The country was divided into feudal domains called Han, ruled by daimyos and guarded by the samurai class. There was no national currency, no modern industry, and no diplomacy. Everything changed when Commodore Matthew Perry's black ships appeared in Edo Bay. Perry didn't come to negotiate, he came to dictate. The United States needed Japan as a refueling station for its coal-powered steamships and as a gateway to the lucrative markets of China. Japan looked at Perry's cannons and realized a terrifying truth. Their swords were useless against industrial steel. This sparked an internal firestorm. The slogan, "Son no Joy," revere the emperor, expel the barbarians, echoed through the islands, leading to a violent civil war that ended the 260-year rule of the Tokugawa shogunate. In 1868, the young Emperor Meiji was restored to power, but the real genius lay in his advisors. In one of the most ambitious projects in human history, Japan sent the Iwakura mission, a group of its top officials, to travel across the US and Europe for 2 years. Their goal? To copy everything that made the West powerful. They didn't just look at factories, they studied central banking in Belgium, the legal codes of France, and the naval doctrines of Britain. They returned with a blueprint for a new Japan. They abolished the samurai class, stripping them of their swords and their stipends, and replaced them with a conscript army modeled after Prussia. They realized that to be a sovereign nation, they needed a modern economy. They founded the Bank of Japan in 1882 and unified the currency under the yen, creating the financial plumbing necessary for a global empire. To industrialize rapidly, the government initially built factories itself, shipyards, mines, and textile mills. But when these became too expensive to run, they sold them to well-connected merchant families at bargain prices. This was the birth of the Zaibatsu, monolithic industrial and financial conglomerates that would dominate Japanese life for a century. The Big Four, Mitsubishi, Sumitomo, Mitsui, and Yasuda, were not just companies, they were states within a state. Each had its own bank, its own shipping line, and its own factories. This created a unique form of capitalism where capital was concentrated in a few powerful hands, allowing for massive, coordinated investment in heavy industry. An interesting historical footnote, Yoko Ono, the avant-garde artist and wife of John Lennon, is the grandfather of the Yasuda Zaibatsu. This shows how deeply these families were woven into the global elite. By the 1890s, Japan's industry and military were ready for a test. In 1894, they stunned the world by defeating the Qing dynasty of China. Japan wasn't just defending its borders, It was seeking markets and resources. However, the victory was bittersweet. Western powers, Russia, Germany, and France, intervened and forced Japan to return the strategic Liaodong Peninsula. This triple intervention left a deep scar on the Japanese psyche. It proved that in the eyes of the West, Japan was still a second-class power. The resentment led to the Russo-Japanese War of 1904. This was a turning point in world history. For the first time, an Asian nation defeated a European great power in a modern war. At the Battle of Tsushima, Admiral Togo destroyed the Russian Baltic Fleet using superior speed and wireless telegraphy. Among the wounded was a young officer named Isoroku Yamamoto, who lost 2 fingers. He would later become the mindset behind the attack on Pearl Harbor. The Russian defeat was so total that it sparked the 1905 revolution, the precursor to the rise of the Soviet Union. During World War I, Japan enjoyed an economic boom, supplying the Allies with munitions and shipping. By 1919, Japan was a Big Five power at the Versailles Treaty Peace. But the party didn't last. The 1920s brought a series of shocks: a post-war depression, the devastating Great Kanto earthquake of 1923, and a massive banking crisis in 1927. As economic hardship grew, the voice of the military became louder. The 1922 Washington Naval Treaty was the final straw for the nationalists. The treaty limited Japan's battleship tonnage to 60% of that of the US and Britain. To the mathematicians in the Japanese government, this made sense. Japan's economy was only 18% of the size of the US economy. But to the military radicals, it was a national humiliation. They began to believe that Japan's spirit could overcome any material disadvantage. Logic was replaced by fervor. We must also address the human cost. In 1910, Japan annexed Korea. What began as a strategic move to secure a buffer zone turned into a 35-year nightmare of colonial exploitation. Japan sought to erase Korean culture, language, and identity. This era remains a deep source of tension in East Asia today. The success of the Meiji miracle was built on the back of such expansionism, creating a cycle where the military needed more resources, which required more conquest, which required a bigger military. Japan's meteoric rise was a masterpiece of human organization, but it was guided by a dangerous ambition. By the late 1920s, the dream of a modern, prosperous Japan had been hijacked by a military machine that no longer listened to economists or diplomats. The stage for the Pacific War was set, and the world was about to witness how a miracle could turn into a catastrophe. If you want to see how this transition led to the fires of 1945, subscribe for our next chapter on the rise of the Pacific Empire.